And unfortunately, like a lot of the momentum that was built up, like from that and some other things, you were sidelined with an injury. Is that what gave you the time, the opportunity to write the book that we're talking about today?
Yeah, pretty much. So I had the idea to write a book, I would say like halfway through last year and maybe a little bit earlier. And I don't know, my life is so crazy. I always do crazy stuff and crazy stuff always just happens to me. And I always would jokingly be like, well, that's another chapter in the book. Well, that'll be another chapter in the book. And then I got to a point where I was like, wait, why don't I just write this book that I've been talking about the whole time? Why don't I just do it? And yeah, so I was kind of thinking about it anyways. And then when I first got injured, like this was before I knew I had to have surgery and take a whole bunch of time off. But I just was like, what am I waiting for? Like, why do I have to wait on something when I can do it right now? And that's kind of being outside of WWE. I've really tried to capitalize on what are all the things that I can do that no one can tell me I can't do right now. Because when you're at a big company that has a whole bunch more say over what you can do, even if you do want to write a book, well, there's a whole bunch more people that have to approve things and say yes and say no. And it's a much longer, bigger process. Whereas right now, being independent, I can control whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can say whatever I want. So I was like, while I can do this and have no one tell me that I can't do this, I'm going to do it right now. So yeah, that was kind of the inspo. And then, yeah, just being injured, I was like, all right, now I got the time. I'm going to go crazy if I'm like sitting on my ass. So let's make this, useful. And yeah, that's kind of how it happens.
So I remember asking Becky when she wrote her book, like, sometimes in your book, you bury some people. Sometimes you say some things that aren't so favorable as you're going through that, because everybody's the hero of their own story, obviously. Like, what goes through your mind as you get to maybe a not so pleasant period where maybe you got to point some fingers at some people?
There's certain stories where I haven't mentioned the names.
Okay.
People who are involved or people who know about it will kind of know. But I've also tried to be clinical in a sense of like, if I bury someone else, I'm also very quick to bury myself. You know what I mean? So I'll put my hand up and say that I did something wrong or I fucked something up. My mindset kind of writing it was like, all right, what I don't want to do is I don't want to say or do anything that's going to land me in really hot water with places that I want to work at. So that was important for me. I also didn't want to it was important. Like I didn't send the book to anyone until it was done, except for my manager who was helping me like organize it. Like I read little snippets to Mance of like, hey, how do you think this sounds? Or what do you think about this? But like, I didn't send it to my family. I didn't send it to any friends. I didn't even tell anyone I was writing it. Like none of my friends even knew until I had the book done. And I sent them the snippet being like, hey, this mentions you. Let me know if you want me to change anything. Because I wanted to make sure that it was authentically me and my story. And I didn't want to let other people's opinions change the book and change the story, because then I felt like, well, I'm writing this for me and for everyone else, but also for me. And I'm writing it from my perspective. So if I get too worried about upsetting or offending someone or making sure every single person that's mentioned is super happy and whatever else, then all of a sudden it's not my book anymore. So I was careful to not bury anyone too much, but at the same time, I also wasn't gonna like be so overthinking it that then it didn't end up being my words, you know?
So writing a book, obviously, I mean, that's an incredible undertaking. It makes you very vulnerable in that sense. And you're already in a vulnerable position. You're sidelined from your job with a very serious injury. Like, what was there an emotional roller coaster there, or did this like give you something to really focus on during that time off?
I mean, there's always like emotional roller coasters when it comes to wrestling, and especially with injuries. I mean, the book was cool in a sense of like, I think it helped me because I felt like I was still doing something purposeful and I was using the time wisely and I wasn't just like sitting on my ass and, you know, bumming around. Like I was like, okay, if I'm out, how do I make the most of this and like do something that can really further my career? And I might not have time again in the next few years to write this. So let's do it now. But as far as the actual process, like I made sure that like it went in waves. Like there was periods of time where I was really inspired and motivated and I sat down and just wrote. And there were times where there was weeks where I was like, I don't want to touch this. I don't want to look at it because I'm not feeling it. And I don't want to get in there and force write stuff just because I have this deadline in my head. Like I want to write it as it comes and I want to feel it. So it was definitely like, there were times where like talking about the vulnerability, like there's one particular story in there that like, I had to step away from, like, I purposely left it to like the end because I was like, first of all, I was like, I don't know if I want to touch on this or not.
Sure.
Like I was going back and forth. So I purposely left it till like towards the end. And then once I started writing, I kept having to like step away from it because I was getting like too deep in again because it was obviously just bringing up a lot of stuff. But that too was like cathartic in a way because it's like, this is something that I've never really spoken about. People don't know this about me. But I know there's also a whole bunch of other people that have been through the same thing that I'm sure if they see I've gone through this, I've dealt with it, and I'm being open about it, it might help one other person. And if that helps one other person, then like I'm okay with sitting here and feeling my feels for a bit and being vulnerable, you know, to help a fan. So it was like a cool process. For the most part, I enjoyed it a lot more than I thought I would.